Is Asis. So today I'll be talking about basic things in programming language. So without any further delay, I'm gonna start this video. So first of all, I'll be talking about programming paradigm. So programming paradigm is different approaches or different ways to write a program. For example, if I get to cook an egg, I can boil that egg, I can fry that egg, I can have it in my own way. Like that, I can use various techniques to write a program. So such various techniques are procedural programming, object-oriented programming, or event-driven programming, imperative programming, or logical mathematical programming. So, but in order to develop a simple project like billing system or fitness application, we'll be using these three techniques to write a program like procedural programming, object oriented programming, event driven programming, which highlights GUI based or user friendly interface, right? So first of all, I'll be talking about procedural programming. So what is procedural programming? So procedural programming basically focuses on writing a sequence of instructions that are executed one after another. So we can reuse a code into several times. So basically it breaks a problem into smaller manageable procedures so that it can be used several times in the program. So this control flow is managed using conditionals like if else statement, switch, like that, and also used using loops. Loops can be for loop, do while loop, nested loop, like that. So some examples of procedural programming can be C++, Pascal, Fortran, etc. So second of all, so I'll be showing a simple example, right? So here we can see, so there I have defined a function, right? So define a function, it's called parameter, and when I call it, it's called argument. So this is the basic procedural programming where I have like I have to call, like I have to ask a user for a number, and then it prints out the square of the number. As we can see here, it prints out the square of number, then it adds and asks for a number again and then adds it. So I can use that number several times. So this is basically the procedural programming. So for that I have used integrated development environment such as the Microsoft Visual Studio. This I have used it. It makes me or any developer very easier because it's user friendly, and I can use various techniques. I can use this procedural programming, object oriented, and event driven programming by using like console.net framework, or I can use uh, different event handlers, like I can use a button and then get to create, edit, or insert the data in the database. For I'll show you the basic input and output program here. So I need to ask a user for his name, right? So I'll ask a user for his name. Enter your name. So I need to read this name first. So this is console.net frameworks. Therefore, I used to use console dot. This is the way of writing a program. So I need to print this, right? So in order to print this, I need to call that thing. So I'll be using at the rate to call that, and hello, hello, my name is, your name is name, right? So I need to print what name. I've missed something and I need to read this thing. This program just asks for the name of the user and then it prints the name. I will see the I'll show you the output of this program. So my name is Asis, right? So it prints hello Asis. So this is the basic input and output programs in this integrated development environment IDE. So now I'll be talking about object oriented programming. What is object oriented programming? So object oriented programming organizes a code around its objects, which are instance of a classes. So I'll be using different classes. so that I can use that classes. For example, if I have to like have a SQL connection, here you can see I have already developed a application for best fitness. So I have to use an SQL like connection over and over again. So I will use a class and I can use that connection over and over again. This is the advantage of using this IDE, integrated development environment. So the object oriented programming models real world entities as objects that have properties, attributes, and behaviors like methods. So there are various ways or techniques to write object oriented programming. For example, data encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So data encapsulation is basically what it will do. It will hide the internal details of an object and provides the interface for interaction. Just it provides a code just for interaction, but it hides the internal details of the program, right? So another thing is inheritance. So inheritance allows classes to inherit properties and behavior from other classes. So like earlier I've said that if I have to use SQL connection over and over again, I can make a class of SQL connection and then use it over and over again. Okay. So next thing is polymorphism. What is polymorphism? Polymorphism enables object of different classes to be treated as object of common class, right? So this is basically the object oriented programming. So I have also used oriented programming and procedural programming and event driven programming to develop a web application for best fitness. So next up I'll be talking about event driven programming. So this is basically what I have used to develop a program for best fitness. So in event driven programming, it basically focuses on responding to events or user actions. It is commonly used in graphical user interfaces GUI based system. In event driven programming, the flow of the program is determined by events, not like procedure programming. It was determined by conditionals, loops, etc. But here it is determined by the flow of events, which can be triggered through interactions, system notification, or other resources. So this is the project that I have developed using this procedural, object-oriented, and event-driven programming. So now I have used various things like cats, try cats. I have used if else statements. I have used conditionals. I have used loops. I have used functions, list. So I'll be talking about that for now. So first of all, I'll be talking about conditional statements. So conditional statement like if else, switch case statement allow users to make decision based on certain condition. For example, if else statements evaluate a condition and execute a block of code if the condition is true. Otherwise, it executes an alternative block of code. Likewise, switch case statement provide a way to select one of many code block to be executed based on the value of variable or an expression. Likewise, nested if else statement. So nested means inside the loop. Like for example, I have used for loop, and inside the for loop, if I use the for loop inside another loop, then it is called as nested thing, right? So nested if else statement allow the user to have multiple levels of conditional statement inside each other, right? So this is the conditional statements that I have used to develop this program. As we can see, I have used, and here this is the design. So this is the buttons. So I have used these buttons to add plan, to delete the plan, to edit the plan, and to close this form, right? So here we can see I have used these things, and I have used the event handler to to program it to create an user or to edit the user, to delete the user, like that. So now I'll be talking about loops. So basically what is loop is loop enable the program user or anyone to execute a block of code repeatedly until a certain conditional is met. For example, for loop for loop is used whenever we know the iterations, like we know how many times the loop need to be uh, like uh, loop need to be like repeated one like if I want to print my name for 5 times, I will be using for loop. So I know the number of iterations, so I'll be using for loop for that. So there is also another loop, which is known as while loop. So while loop is used to execute a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. So if the condition is true, like for example, if I'm hungry, then serve me a food. If I'm hungry, until I'm hungry, it serves the food. Otherwise, it will break or close the program. Like that, do while loop is also similar to while loop, but the block of code is executed at least once, and it is checked after being executed. Like for example, if I'm hungry, so while loop, what it does, it is it until I'm hungry, it will execute the code. But in while loop, it checks whether I'm hungry or not, and then it executes the code, right? So another loop is for each loop. So for each loops are used to iterate over a collection of elements such as array, list, without explicitly managing an index or control value. For each loop is used like to iterate over a collections like a array, list, like that, right? So next of all, I will be talking about collections. Collection provide a way to store and manipulate groups of related data elements like array, array list, list functions. These are basically collections. So first of all, I will be talking about array. So array are fixed size collection that can hold elements of same type. They offer a direct access to element using an index, right? So if the collection have like similar type, like a type of bird, then I use array. So what is array list? Next of all, array list is also called dynamic arrays, and it is a resizable collection that can hold elements of any type. They provide flexibility in terms of adding, removing, and accessing the elements. So next of all, I'll be talking about list. So lists are generic collections that allow me or any programmer or any user to store and manipulate elements of any type. They provide various methods to add, remove, and access the elements. Function. So next of all, I'll be talking about functions. So function is also called procedures, like I've talked in procedural programming. So they are reusable block of code that can perform specific tasks. So function encapsulate a set of instructions and can accept input parameters and return the output values. So in procedural programming, so it supports different types of functions such as void functions which do not return a value, function that return a single value, and function that return a multiple value. Function allow code for modularity, reusability, and better logic of code. So these are the things, basic things that is used to develop this program, right? So now I have made this presentation so that it will be easier for us to understand. So these are the functions, these are collection that I've already talked. So this is the like pros, and I'll be talking about pros and cons of procedural and object oriented programming. So what is the pros of comparison of programming paradigm? So basically I'll be talking about the pros and cons of programming paradigm. So first of all, I'll be talking about procedural programming. So advantages of using procedural programming. So first of all, it is very easy to use procedural programming, and it is easy to make some mathematical calculation, therefore it is used over and over again. So another thing is efficiency. So in procedural programming, it can be very efficient as it avoids the overhead associated with creating and managing objects. Flexibility is another advantage of using procedural programming. Procedural programming allows for more flexible data structures, making it suitable for certain types of algorithms and data processing tasks. So another advantages of using of procedural programming is its compatibility. Procedural programming can often be used in combination with other programming paradigms, allowing for a mixed approaches. Like in order to develop this project, I have used several techniques. So one of them is procedural programming as well. For example, here I have used uh, if if statement. This is from procedural programming. I have used different classes. This is object oriented programming. So I have used this try, throw, try this checks. This will make checks whether the program is checks for an error. This basically checks, and this is the SQL connections. So this is the efficiency of using procedural programming. So I'll be talking about now disadvantages of using the procedural programming. So main disadvantage of using procedural programming is it cannot be used in big projects. For example, if I have to develop a program for a program project, I can't use procedural programming. I have to use different thing. I have to use a GUI based system or other thing, right? So now I'll be moving ahead towards object oriented programming, its advantages. So first of all, object oriented programming allows for modular code development where complex system can be divided into smaller, simpler, manageable objects. This promotes code reuse, maintainability, and scalability. Another advantage of using OOP is encapsulation. Edit hides methods, data within the objects, hiding the internal implementation details. This enhances security as access to the data is controlled through well-defined interfaces. So another main advantage of using OOP is data abstraction. At OOP, as OOP emphasizes abstracting complex system into simpler, more manageable objects. This abstraction helps in understanding and reasoning about the code. Another thing is inheritance and polymorphism. OOP support inheritance and polymorphism, allowing an object to inherit its properties and behavior from a parent class. The code can be used over and over again. At the same time, objects can be on different forms and respond differently to the same message or method call. This allows a flexible and extensible code. So the disadvantage of using OP is main advantage is overhead. OP can introduce additional overhead due to the need to create and manage object. This overhead can be negligible in small scale application but become a significant in performing critical scenario. It can be very complex. So complexity is another problem. OP can sometimes lead to complex code structure, especially when inheritance hierarchies become a deep or when objects interact in different ways. The complexity can make a code harder to understand and maintain. For example, if we look here, this is very difficult to understand. Like here, this is very difficult because I have used several OPs techniques. So it makes the user or the normal people like very difficult to understand the code, as it was easier to understand procedural programming. For example, I have shown the basic input output uh, code that was very easy to understand, right? So next of all, I'll be talking about event driven programming. So the main pros of using the event driven programming is using of GUI thing, like it is user friendly interface. For example, here, so this is user friendly. I can see there is customer name and it will show the customer name. It will show the plan, selected plan. I'll be showing you, wait, for example, wait, I'll be showing you by, Now we can see this is very easy for user or anybody to use because it is user friendly. I can see, I can create a user, I can edit the user, delete it, I can do anything. So this makes the event programming very easy to understand. And the main another advantage of using this is extensibility. Event programming often high extensibility as new events can be easily added without modifying the existing code. For example, I can add like time or date easily, or I can add uh, specialist special trainers like that. I can easily add without removing need to remove anything. So the code can be same, but I can add more things. So its versatility makes it more to use. Uh, so disadvantage of using the event-driven programming is complexity. It's very complex to understand. For example, so now here is connection class. This is OP. So it is very difficult to understand. As we can see here, I have used SQL statements. I have used different techniques. So it is very difficult to understand or difficult to even write this code, right? So another thing is debugging and testing. Due to its event-driven nature, debugging and testing can be more challenging. So if there any problem arises, like for example, if I do this, so there is no the programs looks fine, but there is missing hash trick. So this can cause a huge problem, and it is very difficult to sort out this problem because it is a SQL command, right? Sometimes I'll be using capital C instead of using small c, so it will create a error in the program. So this is the main disadvantages of event driven programming. So another disadvantage of using event driven programming is the flow control. In the procedural programming, we simply use conditional statements, loops to control the flow, but here I need to use different events. Event driven programming can sometimes lead to complex flow control logic, especially when handling multiple events with dependency or maintaining the state. So this makes the program very difficult to debug and test, right? So event driven programming, to sum up, is a very effective way to write a program. So I have used these three programming paradigm to write a program for best fitness. I have already shown you. So this is the program for best fitness. As we can see, uh, I can add a user. So this is username and password. I can successfully like log in, and if I put incorrect password, then it doesn't allow me to log in. So but if I put the right password, it allows me to log in. So this is for the security purpose. I can create a user, I can register a customer, I can edit the customer, I can delete the customer, I can add a training plan. As we can see, I can add a training plan, I can add a customer training plan, and it calculates all of the things. It calculates how much amount is need to be paid by the customer, like that. And this is possible due to the use of event driven programming, procedural and object oriented programming. Without it, it will be very difficult for me to develop this program. So thank you everybody for cooperating. So this is my program, and I have used different programming paradigm to write this or to design or develop this project or application for best fitness. So thank you everybody. Hope you guys have a good day ahead. Thank you.